The Greyhound bus pulled into Loveland at exactly 3:47 p.m., 17 minutes behind schedule. Laura Connolly clutched her worn sports bag to her chest, all she owned after 6 years, 2 months, and 14 days in an Ohio correctional facility. Through the dirty bus window, she looked at the familiar streets that seemed both familiar and foreign. Loveland had hardly changed. The same crooked wooden houses, the same cracked sidewalks, the same sign for Mel's Diner with the flashing letter M. Only Laura herself had changed beyond recognition. At 38, she looked older than her peers. Her short dark hair, which she had cut herself in prison, her hard facial features, and new wrinkles around her eyes. Prison had taught her to stand up straight and look people in the eye without averting her gaze. At the bus station, a euphemism for a regular stop near a gas station, no one was there to meet her. Laura hadn't expected anyone. Her mother knew she had been released, but they hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not after that letter. She walked to the city center, past the closed Ohio Steel factory, which had gone bankrupt 3 years ago. Half the shop windows on the main street were boarded up. The crisis had not spared Loveland. Her mother's house was at the end of Maple Street, a small, neat house with blue shutters. Laura stood at the gate for a long time, gathering her courage. Finally, she knocked. Marge Blake opened the door and froze. 64 years old, her gray hair pulled back into a tight bun, wearing the same stern, metal-rimmed glasses. Her mother had aged, but she was still the same. Laura. Her voice was emotionless. "Hi, Mom." They looked at each other through the screen door. Marge was the first to look away. "Come in, but not for long." The living room smelled of lavender and old books. Marge had worked at the city library her entire life. On the mantelpiece were photographs. Laura and Emma as children, Emma at her nursing college graduation, Emma in her wedding dress next to the man Laura knew better than anyone else in the world. "When was that?" Laura nodded at the wedding photo. 2 years ago, in September." Marge sat down in her chair and clasped her hands in her lap. "They look happy." Laura studied the photo. Emma, her younger sister, was smiling at the camera. Standing next to her was Danny Connolly, her ex-husband. The same Danny she had spent 6 years in prison for. "Where do they live?" "In your old house. Danny bought it back after the trial." Of course. The house on Oak Street that she and Danny had bought on a mortgage in 2015. The house where she had dreamed of raising her children. Now her sister and the man who had betrayed her lived there. "Mom, I need a place to stay until I find a job." "No." Marge shook her head. "I can't. Emma comes here every day after her shift. She can't see you. She's not ready." Laura expected the refusal, but it still hurt. "I understand. What about a job? Would anyone hire an ex-convict?" "Try Carl at the grocery store. He knew your father. Maybe he'll take you out of pity." Laura stood up. The conversation was over. "Mom, I'm not to blame for what happened. You know that, don't you?" Marge was silent for a long time, staring at the photo of her daughters. "I know you never laundered money. I know it was Danny, but you chose to protect him instead of the truth, and now you're reaping the consequences." Outside, Laura took a crumpled note with an address from her bag. Social Services had found her a room at the Sunny Beach boarding house, an ironic name for a shabby 2-story building near the railroad tracks. The landlady, a woman in her 50s with dyed red hair, handed her the key without asking any questions. "Doran Campbell. Payment is weekly on Mondays. Shared shower and kitchen. No guests after 10. The room was tiny. A bed, a chest of drawers, a chair, and a window overlooking the railroad tracks. Laura sat down on the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. Quietly, as she had learned in prison. The next morning, she went to Carl's grocery store. She remembered the store from her childhood, the same narrow aisles, the same creaky floorboards, the same smell of yeast from the bakery section. Carl Zimmerman had gray hair and had gained a lot of weight, but his smile was the same. Laura Blake, or rather Connolly, although now it's Blake again, I guess. Just Laura. Carl nodded understandingly. "Need a job? Assistant in the hall, stocking shelves, cashier sometimes. $8 an hour, no insurance. Not much, but better than nothing." "Sure. You start tomorrow, 7 in the morning." As she left the store, Laura bumped into a woman in her 40s wearing a nurse's uniform. She didn't recognize her at first. Emma had changed a lot over the years. She had gained weight, grown her hair long, and developed laugh lines around her eyes. The sisters froze, staring at each other. Laura. Emma's voice sounded like a mixture of guilt and fear. Emma, I didn't know you were back. Yesterday. Emma shifted from foot to foot, clutching her purse. How are you? Where are you staying? In a boarding house near the station. Carl got me a job. That's good. Laura, Emma faltered, searching for the right words. I have to go. My shift is starting. She turned and walked quickly away. Laura watched her go. A gold ring glinted on Emma's finger, the same one she had worn 6 years ago. That evening, Laura walked slowly down Oak Street. Her old house looked better than it had when she lived there. A new roof, fresh paint, a well-kept lawn. Warm lights shone through the windows. It was idyllic. She remembered the day 6 years ago when the federal agents came to their house. The search lasted 8 hours. They found fake documents for a company called Connolly Enterprises, bank accounts with suspicious transactions, records of financial fraud. Danny sat at the kitchen table, pale as a ghost. Laura, baby, they think it's you, that you laundered money through your accounting firm. But that's not true. I know. But the evidence is against you. Someone framed you. He didn't say that he was the one who framed her. At the trial, Danny testified as the victim. He talked about how he trusted his wife to manage their finances, how she abused that trust. He played the role of the deceived husband masterfully. Laura remained silent, even when the lawyer begged her to name the real culprit, even when the judge asked about her motives. She remained silent because she loved him, because she believed that Danny would reform, get her out of prison, and explain everything to everyone. 6 years of waiting, 6 years of hope, and the finale, a wedding photo with her sister. Laura reached the end of the street and turned around. Tomorrow a new life begins, but first, she needs to deal with the old one. In the boarding house, she took out the only thing she had brought from her past life, a copy of her marriage certificate. She had never officially divorced, so Danny had committed bigamy by marrying Emma. I wonder if Sheriff Tom Harris knows about that. Her first day at work began at 7 in the morning with taking inventory in the dairy section. Carl showed Laura how to use the barcode scanner, explained the discount system, and introduced her to the other employees. There were only 3 of them: Betty, an elderly cashier who had been working there for 20 years, and Jason, a student working part-time who unloaded goods in the evenings. Don't pay attention to the stairs, Carl said quietly as the first customers began to turn their heads toward Laura. Gossip is like oxygen in a small town. Without it, people would suffocate. But it was hard to ignore. Laura felt curious and judgmental stares on her every minute. Mrs. Patterson, her former neighbor, pointedly moved to another line. Jim Cowler from the hardware store stared at her for a long time as if she were a museum exhibit. By lunchtime, Laura had worked out a strategy: stand up straight, smile politely, and answer questions briefly. Prison had taught her not to show weakness. At 2 o'clock, Sheriff Tom Harris walked into the store. Laura recognized him immediately. A tall, broad-shouldered man with prematurely graying temples and tired eyes. He was the same man who had arrested her 6 years ago on charges of money laundering. Harris slowly made his way through the aisles, picked up a pack of cigarettes and a can of coffee, then headed for the checkout where Laura was working. "Welcome home, Laura." His voice was neutral, professional. "Thanks, Sheriff." He handed her the money, their fingers accidentally touching. "How are you settling in?" "Fine. Working, staying out of trouble." "That's great." Harris took the change. "You know, I never really believed you were guilty. The evidence was too obvious." Laura froze. What did he mean? "But the court decided otherwise," she replied cautiously. "Courts are sometimes wrong. If you remember anything important about the case, get in touch." He left, leaving Laura confused. What did Harris know? And why was he bringing it up now? After work, Laura stopped by Gloria's, the only hair salon in town. She wanted to tidy herself up. There was no time for beauty in prison. Gloria Mendez, the salon owner, greeted her warily. "Laura Blake, I heard you were back. I want to get my hair cut and colored." Gloria silently pointed to the chair. While she was working, other customers came into the salon. Their conversations died down when they saw Laura, then resumed in hushed whispers. "They say Danny's changed a lot since you were arrested," Gloria said unexpectedly, combing Laura's wet hair. "He's become nervous, quick-tempered. And then he started dating your sister. People deal with grief in different ways." "Grief?" Gloria snorted. "He grieved for exactly 1 month. Then he bought a new car and started throwing money around. I wonder where a mechanic gets that kind of income." Laura pricked up her ears. Gloria clearly knew something. "Is his workshop doing well?" "Very well. Customers even come from neighboring towns. They say Danny can get any part, even ones that aren't officially available." After the hair salon, Laura looked almost the same as before. Shoulder-length brown hair, neatly cut. Only her eyes were different. Hard, wary. In the evening, she decided to take a walk around town. She walked to Danny's auto repair shop on Industrial Street. It used to be a small garage, but now it was a whole complex with 3 bays, an office, and a parking lot for customers. The sign read, "Connolly Motors, repairs of any complexity." Next to it, in smaller letters, "Spare parts to order." Laura hid around the corner of the neighboring building. The lights were on in the workshop, and she could hear the sound of tools working. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, a black SUV with no license plates pulled up to the side entrance. 2 men in expensive suits got out, clearly not locals. Danny met them at the door. Even from a distance, Laura could see that he was nervous. The men spoke briefly with him. Then Danny led them into the back of the workshop. Half an hour later, the visitors left. Danny stood at the entrance for a long time, smoking and looking around nervously. Laura quietly walked away. Gloria was right. Danny clearly had new sources of income, and they were hardly legal. The next day, the store was particularly busy. The weekend was approaching, and people were stocking up on groceries. Laura was working at the cash register when Emma showed up around 3 in the afternoon. Her sister looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her hair carelessly pulled back into a ponytail. Her nurse's uniform was wrinkled, as if she had been working non-stop. Emma picked up a basket and slowly walked through the aisles, clearly delaying the moment of their meeting. Finally, she approached the checkout with a minimal selection of groceries: bread, milk, canned goods. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi, how's work?" "Fine. Lots of patients lately." Emma paused, then added, "Laura, I need to talk to you. Seriously." "About what?" Emma looked around. There were several other people in line, all listening intently. "Not here. Can we meet tonight? At the park by the monument?" Laura nodded. After work, she went home, changed, and headed to the city park. Emma was already waiting on a bench near the war memorial. The sisters sat down next to each other, a gap of 6 years of separation and betrayal between them. "Laura, I want to explain," Emma began. "What exactly? How did you sleep with my husband while I was in prison?" Emma flinched as if she had been struck. "It didn't happen right away. Danny was devastated after you were arrested. I just wanted to help, to support him." "What about the ring? My engagement ring on your finger?" Emma instinctively hid her hand. "He said you were divorced." "We never got divorced, Emma. That means your marriage is invalid." "What?" Emma turned pale. "But he filed for divorce. Check with the court. There was no official divorce." Emma was silent, digesting the information. "Laura, I know I did a terrible thing, but I love him, and he loves me. He only loves himself. He always has." "That's not true. You don't know what he's been through. Your arrest broke him." Laura smiled bitterly. "Broke him? He seems to be doing quite well. A new workshop, expensive clients." "What does the workshop have to do with it?" "From what I've seen of the people who come to see him, expensive suits, cars with no license plates." Emma frowned. "What are you talking about?" "He doesn't tell you anything about his work? He says business is good. Lots of repair jobs." Emma's voice grew more uncertain. "Emma, listen to me carefully. 6 years ago, Danny was laundering money through shell companies. When the scheme was uncovered, he framed me, and I was foolish enough to cover for him. That's not true. Then explain where a mechanic got the money for a new workshop, a house, and an expensive car? Emma stood up and began to pace nervously. I can't believe it. Danny isn't capable of that. He is. And how? What's more, I don't think he's given it up. He's just become more careful. Do you have any proof? Not yet, but I will find some. Emma stopped and looked at her sister. Why are you doing this? Do you want revenge? Laura was silent for a long time. I want justice. I want the truth to come out at last. What if the truth destroys my life? Your life is already built on lies, Emma. Her sister sat back down on the bench and covered her face with her hands. What should I do? Think about what I said. Take a closer look at your husband. And remember, if anything happens, I'll always be your sister. Emma nodded without looking up. I have to go. Danny will be worried. After Emma left, Laura sat in the park for a long time. Her plan gradually took shape. She needed to gather evidence of Danny's criminal activities, find a way to get to his accomplices, and most importantly, make him confess what happened 6 years ago. But first, she needed to talk to Sheriff Harris. His words in the store wouldn't leave her mind. If he suspected a setup, why had he kept quiet all these years? Returning to the boarding house, Laura noticed she was being followed. A white pickup truck kept its distance but turned to follow her. When she stopped at a traffic light, the car stopped too. An unfamiliar man in a baseball cap was behind the wheel. Laura couldn't see his face, but she felt uneasy. In prison, you learn to recognize danger intuitively. She turned into an alley, and the pickup truck drove past, but she still felt like she was being followed. At home, Laura locked all the doors and drew the curtains. Someone already knew she was back and wasn't happy about it. Perhaps it was the same person who had set her up 6 years ago. The game had started again. And this time, Laura wasn't going to lose. A week had passed since the conversation in the park. Laura hadn't seen Emma, but she had heard the gossip. Shopper, family life is falling apart, Betty remarked meaningfully as she arranged the merchandise. And you're right here. Coincidence? Laura did not respond to such hints. She had more important things to do. Every evening after work, she watched Danny's workshop. She figured out a pattern. The mysterious visitors came on Tuesdays and Fridays, always after 8 p.m. The meetings didn't last long, an hour at most. Sometimes they brought boxes, sometimes they took them away. On Wednesday morning, Laura decided to take action. She knew that Danny usually left for the bank around 10 in the morning, an old habit left over from when they lived together. That gave her a half-hour window. The workshop was locked, but Laura remembered where Danny kept the spare key, under a flower pot by the back door. Some habits never change. Inside, it smelled of machine oil and metal, 3 bays for repairing cars, an office, a parts warehouse. Everything looked normal, but Laura knew where to look. In the office, behind the safe, she found a door that hadn't been there before. The door was unlocked. Danny clearly hadn't expected any uninvited guests. Behind the door was a small room with no windows. There was a workbench, tools, and several dismantled car parts. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary workshop, but Laura noticed something that a casual visitor would not have seen. The parts were too new and expensive for ordinary repairs. The VIN numbers had been knocked off or restamped. In the corner were boxes with labels in foreign languages: German, Japanese, Italian. Laura photographed everything with an old phone she had bought with cash. Then she carefully examined the workbench. In the desk drawer were documents, invoices, bills, correspondence. Most were in English, but there were other languages as well. One document caught her attention. It was an invoice from Alpine Import for the delivery of automotive components worth $150,000. The date was last month. Laura knew this scheme. Danny bought stolen expensive cars, dismantled them for parts, and sold them through front companies. Classic money laundering, only now with the addition of dealing in stolen goods. The sound of a car approaching made her freeze. Danny was back earlier than usual. Laura quickly photographed the documents, neatly folded them back, and slipped out the back door. She had barely made it to the corner of the building when she heard Danny enter the workshop. Her heart was pounding, but the adrenaline kept her thinking clearly. She had the evidence. Now she had to decide what to do with it. That evening, there was a knock at her door. Laura cautiously opened it to find Emma standing there. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair was disheveled, and her hands were shaking. "Can I come in?" Laura let her sister into the room. Emma sat down on the only chair and wrapped her arms around herself. "You were right," she said quietly. "About the divorce. I checked with the court. There are no papers." "So you're married to a married man?" "I guess so," Emma sobbed. "I asked Danny directly. At first he denied it. Then he got angry and shouted that it didn't matter, that he loved me. And then he said that if I didn't calm down, I'd end up where you are." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "Did he threaten you?" "Not directly, but the meaning was clear." Emma raised her head and looked at her sister. "Laura, I'm scared. Danny has changed. He's become aggressive and suspicious. Yesterday I found a gun in his jacket. He's never had a gun. He does now, and he's been getting strange phone calls. He's been speaking a different language. I thought it was Spanish, but now I'm not sure." Laura took out her phone and showed her the photos she had taken of the documents. "Do you recognize the handwriting?" Emma stared at the screen. "Danny wrote that. Where did you get this?" "I found it in his workshop." "Emma, he's selling stolen car parts. He's laundering money through front companies. It's the same thing he did 6 years ago." "My God!" Emma covered her face with her hands. "What should I do? I tied my life to him, quit my job at a big hospital to move to Loveland." "You didn't quit your job. You work as a nurse at the local hospital. It's a side job, 3 shifts a week for peanuts. Danny promised I wouldn't have to work once we had children." "Children?" Laura's ears pricked up. "I'm pregnant," Emma said quietly. 2 months. The world around Laura began to spin. A child. Emma was expecting her husband's child. "Does he know?" "No. I wanted to tell him on our wedding anniversary next month. I thought it would be a nice surprise." Laura stood up and walked over to the window. It was starting to drizzle outside. "Emma, you have to leave town. Right now." "Where?" "I have no money, no job." "You have Aunt Mary in Cleveland. She'll take you in." "But the baby is Danny's." "It's your baby, and it shouldn't grow up with a criminal." Emma stood up and began pacing the room. "I can't just leave. Danny will look for me." "He won't. He'll have other problems soon." "What do you mean?" Laura turned to her sister. "Tomorrow I'm going to Sheriff Harris. I'll show him the photos and tell him everything I know. Danny will be arrested, and this time the evidence will be against him, not me. What if he shifts the blame onto someone else again? Me, for example. I won't let him. I've served enough time for someone else's sins." Emma approached Laura and took her hands. "Laura, I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish. I only thought about myself. You were in love. That's not a crime. But I betrayed you. My own sister. Let's forget about it. The main thing now is to keep you and the baby safe." Emma nodded and wiped away her tears. "Okay. Tomorrow, after you talk to the sheriff, I'll tell Danny that I'm going to a friend's house for the weekend. But I'll actually go to Aunt Mary's." "Good girl. And Emma, be careful. Don't let anyone know what you know." After her sister left, Laura couldn't sleep for a long time. The plan was simple. Go to Harris in the morning, show him the evidence, and get Danny arrested. But something told her it wouldn't be that easy. At 4 in the morning, she was awakened by the phone ringing. An unfamiliar number. "Hello? Laura Blake?" A man's voice, hoarse, with an accent. "Who is this?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." "What are you talking about?" "About your ex-husband's studio, about the photos you took, about your conversations with his sister." Laura froze. They knew. They had been watching her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know what I'm talking about. And if you don't want the same thing that happened to Jimmy Krause in 2019 to happen to you, forget everything." "Who is Jimmy Krause?" But the phone was already hanging up. Laura turned on the computer in the boarding house lobby and found information about Jimmy Krause, a local journalist who had been investigating corruption in the city administration 3 years ago. He died in a car accident under suspicious circumstances. The case was closed as an accident. Now, everything was clear. Danny wasn't working alone. He had patrons who were willing to kill to keep the secret. But it was too late to back out. She had kept quiet for too many years and paid too high a price for someone else's guilt. At 8 in the morning, Laura arrived at the sheriff's office. Harris was there, drinking coffee and studying some documents. "Laura, you're early. I need to talk to you. Seriously." Harris put down his papers. "I'm listening." Laura took out her phone and showed him the photos from the workshop. Danny Connolly is back to his criminal activities. He's selling stolen car parts and laundering money. Harris studied the photos carefully. "Where did you get these?" "From his workshop." "Did you break in?" "I had a key." "Laura," Harris sighed. "Even if that's true, the evidence was obtained illegally. The court won't accept it. What if I report my suspicions officially? Get a search warrant?" "On what grounds? The word of an ex-convict who may be seeking revenge on her ex-husband?" Laura realized she had reached a dead end. "Sheriff, 6 years ago you said you didn't believe I was guilty. Why?" Harris was silent for a long time. "Because I knew Danny since he was a child. I knew what he was capable of. But the evidence against you was ironclad. Because he planted it. Maybe, but it was impossible to prove. And now? Now too. Laura, take my advice. Forget about revenge. Start your life over. Find a job in another city, meet a good man. As long as he's free, I won't be able to live in peace." Harris stood up and walked over to the window. "Then be very careful. Danny isn't the guy you used to know. He's got connections now. Dangerous connections. Do you know about that?" "I have my suspicions, but suspicions aren't proof." Laura stood up. "So you won't help me?" "I can't help you officially, but..." Harris turned to her. "If anything happens to you, I'll know who to look for." It was little consolation, but at least it was something. As she left the sheriff's office, Laura almost bumped into Danny. He was walking down the hallway with some documents in his hands, saw her, and froze. They stood facing each other, former spouses separated by a chasm of lies and betrayal. "Laura, what brings you here?" "Civil matters. I'm getting my documents back." Danny studied her face as if trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. "How are you? Did you find a job?" "I'm working at Carl's store." "That's good. Work is the best medicine for bad thoughts." The phrase sounded like a warning. "I agree. How's your workshop? I hear business is good." "Not bad. Plenty of customers." "It must be nice to do what you love." Danny narrowed his eyes. "Laura, let's get this out in the open. What do you want?" "Nothing. Just talking to my ex-husband." "Ex? Isn't that what it is? Or did you forget to divorce me before you married Emma?" Danny paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Bigamy. A criminal offense, by the way." "Laura." Danny's voice grew quieter, more dangerous. "I think prison has done a number on you. You've become paranoid. Or maybe I've just seen the light." Danny took a step closer. "Listen to me carefully. You served your time. You got a second chance. Don't throw it away. Loveland has a long memory but a short attention span." "Is that a threat?" "Friendly advice." Laura didn't back down. "Then here's my advice to you, Danny. The truth always comes out sooner or later. Always." She turned and walked away, feeling his eyes on her back. The game had reached a new level. Now they both knew what the other knew. All that remained was to wait for the first move. Friday started with bad news. Emma didn't show up for work at the hospital, and when Laura called her home, Danny answered the phone. "Emma's sick," he said curtly. "She's in bed with a fever." "Should I come over? Bring her some medicine?" "No, I'll take care of her." There was cold determination in his voice. Laura realized that Danny suspected something. After work, she rode her rented bike to the house on Oak Street. The lights were on, but Emma's car wasn't in the driveway. Strange, her sister always left her Honda near the house. Laura walked around the house to the backyard. A shadow flashed in the kitchen window. Danny was pacing the room, talking on the phone. Judging by his gestures, the conversation was tense. She moved closer, hiding behind an old oak tree she had planted herself 10 years ago. The window was slightly open, and Danny's voice came through clearly. "She knows too much. No, persuasion won't work. Laura is stubborn as a mule. I understand that this is complicated, but we have no choice. Pause. Danny listened to the other person. Emma? She's in a safe place. She won't run away. Of course, I love her, but business is more important. Okay, tonight. At the workshop. The conversation ended. Danny walked into the living room, and Laura saw him through another window. He took a gun out of the safe, checked the bullets, and tucked the weapon into his waistband. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed to be audible throughout the entire street. Danny was going to kill her. Tonight. Laura quietly left the house and rushed to the sheriff's office. But it was already closed. Harris had gone home. She knew his address. But what would she say? That her ex-husband was going to kill her based on a conversation he had overheard. She needed proof. Irrefutable proof. At 7:30, Laura took up position opposite Danny's workshop. The tape recorder was in her jacket pocket. The plan was simple. Get him to confess to crimes he had committed 6 years ago, record the confession, and pass it on to Harris. It was a dangerous plan, but there was no other way out. At 8 o'clock in the evening, a familiar black SUV pulled up to the workshop. 2 men in dark suits got out, the same ones who had come earlier. Laura turned on the tape recorder and walked toward the building. The side door was unlocked. Laura slipped inside quietly and hid behind a rack of spare parts. Voices could be heard from the next room. "The problem must be solved today," said an unfamiliar man with a slight accent. "Our partners are getting nervous." "Everything will be taken care of," Danny replied. "Laura will come. I know how to lure her out." "What about your wife?" "Emma is locked in the basement of the old Milton house. No one will find her there. After we deal with Laura, we'll decide what to do with her." Laura almost cried out. "Emma was in danger." "We're not interested in your family drama," said the second stranger coldly. "We're only interested in business. The money laundering operation must not be compromised." "It won't be. Laura is the only one who can hurt us. Without her..." Danny's phone rang. He answered it. "What? Who was that? Got it. We'll take care of it." He hung up and turned to his accomplices. "Problem. Someone called the sheriff and said they heard screams coming from the Milton house. Harris is on his way to check it out." "Damn! Who could have known?" "I don't know. But that means the plan has changed. We need to act immediately." Laura realized that time was running out. She had to run and call for help. But when she turned around, she bumped into a third man who had entered through the front door. "Here's our guest," he said calmly in Russian. Laura froze. The Russian accent in the threatening phone calls. It was him. "Laura!" Danny appeared from the next room. What a surprise, although not entirely a surprise. "Let Emma go," Laura said. "She's not to blame for anything. She's guilty. She knows too much, just like you." Danny pulled out a gun. 6 years ago, you ruined my life by refusing to keep quiet in court." "I kept quiet. I took the blame for you." "Not completely. You could have said you were acting under duress, that I forced you. Then the investigation would have dug deeper. I was trying to protect you. Protect me, or get revenge. You thought that if you went to prison, I'd feel guilty, confess, and take you back?" Laura looked at the man she had once loved. Had he always been like this? "I loved you, Danny. And I used you. I needed a front man for my business, an accountant I could pin my crimes on. You were perfect, trusting, in love, a fool." The words hurt more than the physical pain. "What about Emma? Are you using her too?" "Emma's a good girl. It's a shame we'll have to get rid of her, but she saw the documents and asked questions." "She's pregnant," Laura cried. Danny flinched as if he had been hit. "What?" 2 months. I was going to tell you on our anniversary." Danny's face changed. For a moment, something human flashed in his eyes. "You're lying. Ask her yourself." One of the Russians looked impatiently at his watch. "Danny, wrap it up. We don't have much time." "Wait." Danny looked at Laura. "If she's pregnant, then what? Will you give up your plans?" Laura took a step forward. "Danny, it's not too late. Let Emma go. Turn yourself into the police. You'll get time, but not life. The child will be waiting for his father." "No." Danny shook his head. "It's too late. Too much has been done." "It's never too late." "Shut up." Danny pointed the gun at Laura. "You ruined everything. If you had just stayed in your prison cell, if you hadn't put your wife in danger, I was protecting the business. You ruined my life, and you want to ruin mine. They shouted at each other, and Laura suddenly realized that this was the end. For one of them, it was definitely the end. Danny, she said quietly, do you remember our wedding? You promised to love me in sickness and in health. Enough. Danny cocked the gun. Goodbye, Laura. At that moment, Sheriff Harris burst into the workshop with 2 deputies. Police, drop your weapons! Chaos ensued. The Russians rushed for the exit, and Danny turned toward the noise. Laura seized the moment, grabbed a heavy wrench from the workbench, and struck Danny's gun-wielding hand with all her might. A shot rang out, and the bullet hit the ceiling. Danny screamed in pain and dropped his gun. Laura picked up the gun and pointed it at her ex-husband. Laura, put the gun down! Harris shouted. He wanted to kill me, and Emma! Put the gun down, and we'll work everything out. Danny was on his knees, holding his broken arm. There was animal fear in his eyes. Laura, please, I didn't shoot. I couldn't. Because you were stopped. No, because I couldn't. You were my wife. I loved you. You're lying. Laura held the gun with both hands. Her finger trembled on the trigger. 6 years of my life. 6 years for your sins. Laura. Harris slowly approached. You're not a murderer, not like him. How do you know? I know. If you were, you would have shot me already. Laura looked at Danny, a pathetic, broken man. Had she really wasted the best years of her life for him? Where's Emma? She asked. The Milton House basement, Danny croaked. Harris nodded to his assistant, who ran toward the exit. Laura, give me the gun. She slowly handed the gun to Harris. Is it over? It's over. Harris handcuffed Danny and read him his rights. 2 Russians were caught at the exit. They had tried to escape, but were ambushed. How did you know? Laura asked. An anonymous tip. Someone said there was a hostage in the Milton House. We went to check it out and found Emma. She told us about the workshop. How is she? She's scared but alive. She's been taken to the hospital. Laura breathed a sigh of relief. The tape recorder? I have everything recorded. Harris took the device. Now we have a confession. That's enough for a conviction. Danny was led away in handcuffs. Passing Laura, he stopped. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For everything. Laura said nothing. Forgiveness had to grow in her heart, but for now there was only emptiness. At the hospital, Emma was lying under an IV. When she saw her sister, she began to cry. Laura, I thought he was going to kill you. It's okay. It's over. What about the baby? The baby is fine, said the doctor. Stress, but no lasting damage. Emma squeezed her sister's hand. What will happen now? Danny will be in prison for a long time. You can get a divorce if you want. You can raise the baby. And you? I don't know. I'll think about it. That night, Laura sat in her room at the boarding house. Rain fell outside, water running down the window like tears. She had dreamed of this day for 6 years. She had dreamed of Danny confessing, of justice being served. But victory was bitter. Danny was broken, but he had no remorse. Emma was free, but pregnant by a criminal. Laura was exonerated, but what next? There was a knock at the door. Sheriff Harris was standing on the threshold. How are you? Fine. How else would it be? Harris entered the room. Laura, I have something to tell you about the case from 6 years ago. What exactly? I knew you were innocent. I knew it from the beginning. Laura raised her head. What? I had my doubts, but I didn't have any proof. And when the proof came, it was too late. You got a sentence. What proof? Harris took an envelope out of his pocket. A letter from Jimmy Krause, the journalist who died 3 years ago. He left it with his lawyer with instructions to give it to me if he died. Laura took the letter with trembling hands. She read it and couldn't believe her eyes. He knew about Danny's connection to the Russian mafia. He knew about the setup, but he was afraid to speak openly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because Jimmy's dead, and dead men don't testify in court. But now that we have Danny's confession on tape, now my case can be reviewed. We can, and we must. Laura slowly folded the letter. Thank you. Harris stood up. Laura, I know that an apology won't bring back the last 6 years of your life. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't protect an innocent man." After he left, Laura stared out the window for a long time. The rain had stopped, and stars were peeking through the clouds. Tomorrow a new life would begin. A real life, without lies and someone else's guilt. But for now, she had to survive this night. Her first night of freedom. 3 months later, Loveland looked like a city after a hurricane, outwardly intact, but with broken lives inside. The trial of Danny Connolly and his accomplices was the talk of the county. Reporters from Cleveland and Columbus flooded the town, turning the quiet lives of the residents into a circus. Laura now lived in a small house on Cherry Street, which she had rented with the money she had received from selling her story to the local newspaper. Sheriff Harris helped her file for state compensation for her wrongful conviction. The process was slow, but sure. Every morning she woke up thinking, "Is this real, or am I dreaming?" 6 years in prison had taught her not to trust good things, but gradually, her new life took on substance and meaning. She quit her job at the store. Carl was understanding. "You need time to get yourself together," he said on her last day at work. "And when you're ready, come back. There'll always be a place for you here." Now, Laura was helping lawyer Jennifer Smith prepare a case for a retrial. The work involved poring over 6-year-old documents, reconstructing the chain of events, and searching for witnesses. "It's a pretty complicated case," Jennifer explained over coffee in her office. "Technically, you've already served your sentence, but we can get you officially exonerated and compensated." "I don't need money. I need people to know the truth." "They already know the truth. It's all anyone in town talks about." Indeed, attitudes toward Laura had changed dramatically. The same people who had eyed her suspiciously 3 months ago now stopped on the street to express their sympathy and support. Mrs. Patterson, who had pointedly avoided Laura at the store, now regularly brought her homemade baked goods. "I always knew you weren't capable of such a thing," she said, as if there had never been any cold stares or whispered comments. Laura accepted the apologies with understanding, but without much joy. Human nature hadn't changed. People had simply adapted to the new circumstances. Emma worried her the most. Her sister had moved in with their mother after being discharged from the hospital, but she kept her distance, as if the guilt over her affair with Danny was still weighing on her. One day in October, Laura decided to visit her. Emma was sitting on the porch of her mother's house, stroking her rounded belly. She was 6 months pregnant. "Hi," Laura said, sitting down next to her. "Hi." Emma didn't look up. "How are you feeling?" "Fine. The doctor says everything is going according to plan." They sat in silence, listening to the rustling of fallen leaves. "Emma, we need to talk." "About what?" "About what's going on between us. We're sisters." Emma finally looked at Laura. Her eyes were filled with tears. "How can you talk to me, after everything I've done?" "What exactly have you done? Fall in love with a man who cheated on you?" "I slept with your husband." "My ex-husband. And you didn't know the whole truth." "I should have known. I should have realized that something was wrong with him." Laura took her sister's hand. "Emma, I don't blame you. Danny was a master at manipulating people. He deceived us both. But I betrayed you, my own sister. You made a mistake." "Haven't I ever made a mistake?" Emma sobbed. "I don't know how to go on. The child will be a constant reminder of what? That you are capable of love? Emma, this child is not to blame for anything. He just wants to be born and be loved. What if he's like his father? Then you'll help him be better than his father." Marge Blake came out onto the porch with a tray of tea. She looked calmer than she had on the day Laura returned. Time really did heal wounds. "Girls, don't sit out in the cold. Emma, you need to take care of yourself." "Mom, can Laura stay for dinner?" Emma asked unexpectedly. Marge nodded. "Of course, it's been a long time since we've been a family." At dinner, they talked about various things: the weather, the news, the upcoming birth. They avoided painful topics, but the atmosphere gradually became warmer. "Mom, do you believe in forgiveness?" Laura asked over dessert. "I do, but forgiveness is not forgetting. It's accepting what happened and being willing to move on." "What if someone has caused a lot of pain? Then forgiveness is harder, but without it, you can't heal completely." Laura understood that her mother was talking not only about Danny, but also about herself. About the decision 6 years ago that had destroyed the family. After dinner, the sisters sat in the nursery that Emma was decorating for the baby. "Laura, I want to divorce Danny," Emma said. "Legally divorce him. It's the right decision. But he's the father of my child. Does he have the right to see his son?" "Son?" Emma smiled for the first time in months. The ultrasound showed it. "It's a boy. Congratulations." "So what about visits with his father?" Laura thought about it. Danny was going to spend at least 15 years in prison. By the time he was released, the child would be the same age she was when she was arrested. "It's your decision, but I would wait. Let the child grow up and Danny think about what he's done. What if he changes? What if he realizes his mistakes? Then you can reconsider your decision, but for now, your job is to have a healthy baby." The next day, Laura went to the trial. Danny sat in the courtroom in an orange prison jumpsuit, thin and aged. When their eyes met, he tried to smile, but it came out pitiful. The prosecutor read out the charges: forming a criminal organization, money laundering, trafficking in stolen property, attempted murder, and perjury. The list was impressive. Danny's lawyer tried to get leniency, citing his client's remorse and cooperation with the investigation, but the evidence was irrefutable. "Defendant Connolly," the judge addressed him. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Danny stood up and looked around the courtroom. His gaze settled on Laura. "Your Honor, I am guilty of all the charges against me, but most of all, I am guilty to my ex-wife, Laura Blake. 6 years ago, I set her up and let her take the fall for my crimes. It was the lowest thing I've ever done in my life." The courtroom was silent. "Laura, if you can hear me, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve to be betrayed like that." Laura didn't respond. Forgiveness is a long process, and a public apology was only the beginning. The judge sentenced Danny to 20 years in prison without parole. His Russian accomplices were each sentenced to 15 years. After the trial, Sheriff Harris approached Laura. "How do you feel?" "Strange. It seems like justice has been served, but I don't feel any joy." "That's normal. Revenge and justice are two different things. Revenge brings satisfaction, justice brings peace. And peace is good. Peace is the opportunity to build a new life." A month later, Laura was officially exonerated and received $300,000 in compensation from the state. She divided the money into 3 parts. One she kept for herself, the second she put into an account for Emma's future child, and the third she donated to a fund to help wrongfully convicted people. "Why?" asked Jennifer Smith. "You could have bought a house, a car, gone on vacation." "Money won't give me back 6 years of my life, but it can help other people in a similar situation." The winter in Loveland was mild. Laura enrolled in computer literacy classes. She had fallen behind in technology during her years in prison. She planned to renew her accounting license and open her own practice. "Aren't you afraid to work with finances again?" Emma asked during one of her visits. "On the contrary, now I understand better than anyone how important it is to do business honestly." Emma blossomed with each passing day. Pregnancy suited her. Her skin glowed, her eyes sparkled, and her movements became smooth and graceful. "Have you thought of a name for the baby?" "I'm thinking of Michael, after my grandfather. Your dad would have been proud." Their father had died when Laura was 20 and Emma was 14. He was a kind, honest man who had taught his daughters the most important thing in life. Family comes before everything else. On New Year's Eve, Emma gave birth to a son. Laura was in the delivery room holding her sister's hand during the contractions. "He's coming!" the midwife shouted. A few minutes later, a tiny human being with a wrinkled red face and a loud voice came into the world. "Michael Blake," Emma whispered, pressing her son to her chest. "You're finally here." Laura looked at her nephew and felt something melt in her heart. This child was a new beginning for the whole family. "He looks like you when you were a baby," she said to Emma. "Really? I was afraid he would look like his father?" "Maybe a little, but that's not a bad thing. Danny wasn't born evil. He made some bad choices, but there was good in him. Do you think we should tell Michael the truth about his father?" "When he's old enough, yes, but not all at once. Let him understand the difference between good and bad first." In the spring, Laura opened an accounting office in a small office on Main Street. At first, clients were reluctant to come in because of their prejudices, but gradually, business picked up. Carl Zimmerman became her first major client. He brought her his store's accounting books and said, "Laura, I trust you more than any accountant in the county. You know the value of honesty." By summer, she had 7 regular clients. The work brought her not only income, but also satisfaction. She was helping local business owners run their businesses transparently and legally. Sometimes Laura received letters from Danny in prison. He wrote about his remorse, his desire to make amends, and asked for permission to correspond with his son. Laura showed the letters to Emma, but left the decision up to her sister. "I'm not ready yet," Emma said. "Maybe when Michael starts school." One day in August, a stranger in his mid-40s walked into Laura's office. He was tall, with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Laura Blake? My name is Robert Johnson. Rob, I heard you help with taxes." "Yes, I do. Come in, have a seat." Rob turned out to be a builder from a neighboring town. Divorced, raising a teenage daughter, he ran a small home repair business. "Business is good, but I'm not good with paperwork," he admitted, "and the tax office scares me." Laura helped him sort out his documents, explained the reporting system, and showed him how to save on taxes legally. "Thanks," Rob said as he left. "I don't know how I would have managed without you. Let me know if you have any questions." He started coming by regularly, sometimes with paperwork, sometimes just to chat. Laura realized she liked him. For the first time in many years, a man made her feel interested rather than wary. "Laura, would you like to have dinner with me?" Rob asked in September. Not for business, just because. She didn't agree right away. Her heart wasn't ready to trust completely, but loneliness was weighing on her. The first date went well. Rob was an attentive listener and an interesting conversationalist. He didn't try to pry into her life or ask painful questions about her past. "I have a history too," he said over dessert. "My ex-wife left me for my best friend. I thought I would never be able to trust anyone again." And what helped? Time and the realization that not all people are the same. The relationship developed slowly. Laura learned to open her heart again, and Rob waited patiently, not rushing things. By Christmas, Michael had learned to crawl and babble his first words. Emma got a job at a nursery school, combining motherhood with her career. "You know, I'm happy," she told Laura during a family dinner. "For the first time in many years, I'm truly happy." "Why?" "Because my life is finally mine. Not Danny's, not guilt, not fear, mine and Michael's." Laura understood that feeling. Freedom, not just physical but emotional, was priceless. On New Year's Eve, Rob proposed. It wasn't grand or theatrical. He simply asked if she would spend the rest of her life with him. "I need time to think," Laura replied. "As much time as you need. I'm in no rush." She thought about it for 3 months. She weighed up the pros and cons, analyzed everything, listened to her heart. In the end, she realized that happiness doesn't just happen. You have to fight for it and build it. The wedding took place in May, in a small church in Loveland. Rob was with his daughter Sarah, Laura was with Emma and little Michael, Marge was with her friends from the library, Carl was with his wife, and Sheriff Harris was with his family. "I, Laura, take you, Robert, to be my husband," she said at the altar. "I promise to love you in joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health." The same words Danny had once said, but now they meant something completely different. After the ceremony, the guests gathered in the restaurant. Sheriff Harris gave a toast. "To Laura, a woman who has been through hell and still has the ability to love. To Rob, a man who saw her for who she is. To justice, which sometimes comes late but comes nonetheless." Laura raised her glass of champagne and looked at the crowd. Family, friends, a new life. Everything she had dreamed of in her prison cell. "To second chances," she said, "and to it never being too late to start over." That evening, the newlyweds danced their first dance to Etta James's "At Last." Laura closed her eyes and allowed herself to believe that the worst was behind her. Ahead of her lay a new life built on truth and love. In a distant prison, Danny Connolly lay on a narrow bunk and stared at the ceiling. He held a photo of his son that Emma had sent him. The boy was smiling at the camera, and there was not a trace of his father's cynicism in that smile, only childlike joy. "I'm sorry, son," Danny whispered into the darkness. "Someday I'll be the father you deserve." But that was another story. A story about how even the most fallen people can change. A story about how forgiveness is not a weakness, but a strength. For now, a new day dawned in Loveland. Laura woke up next to her loving husband, in a house that had become a real home, in a life that finally belonged only to her.